They called them bedtime stories. Primal superstitions. Ancient Terran ghosts meant to scare children. Until the lights on Orion's Mercy dimmed for 3 seconds too long, and every sensor registered a pulse that didn't exist. That's when the laughter stopped, and they finally turned to the one man who never laughed to begin with. Commander Ward. They laughed. Of course they did. The towering reptilian bruisers from Sector Varnak guffawed so hard they nearly upended the mess hall table. The insectoid tacticians clacked their mandibles in what passed for amusement. Even the emotionless Lidhari emitted an ultrasonic chirp of amusement as the latest Terran tale was mocked on the holo display. Primitive nonsense, hissed Commander Yerrick, for jaws sneering in unison. Monsters under the bed. Death gods with flaming swords. Your species spins these tales like frightened larvae. Ward sat alone at the corner table, hands folded, eyes cold and distant. He didn't flinch at the laughter. He didn't defend his culture. He didn't even blink. Come, human! Another voice rang out, Lieutenant Charloth, a six-eyed psionic with gleaming scales. You've said nothing all evening. Share one of your myths. Terrify us with a shadow puppet. Ward sipped his synth coffee and finally looked up. Fine, he said. Silence. He didn't rise. Didn't raise his voice. But the silence crept in like a fog, thick and suffocating. Even the background hum of the ship seemed to quiet, as if listening. There's one story, Ward said. Not one we tell kids. One we whisper to soldiers before a suicide run. He leaned forward. We call it the silence between the stars. A smirk from the insected. An eye roll from Charloth. Ward continued. It's not a creature. Not really. It's hunger. Memory hunger. A thinking void. A concept that hunts. It waits in dead space, between systems, between light, and when a civilization forgets to fear, it comes. It doesn't kill with claws or plasma. It erases. Names vanish. Maps fail. You die, and even your bones don't remember who you were. Charlotte snorted. You mean a black hole? Ward's stare turned surgical. No. A black hole eats matter. This eats meaning. Someone chuckled. Then came the laughter again. Louder. Mocking. You poor little primitive. Yerrick boomed. Is this why your race paints blood on steel? Clinging to ritual like a frightened child? Ward stood. Slowly. They're not rituals. They're warnings. The lights flickered. For a heartbeat, everything paused. Systems blinked. Holoscreens glitched. A low pulse thrummed through the floor, so deep it bypassed the ears and vibrated in the chest. Power fluctuation, the Lidhari technician said flatly. Localized. Ward was already moving. Where are you going? Charlotte called after him. To the armory, Ward said without looking back. You're about to learn the hard way why humans remember our myths. 2 hours later, a recon pod returned from the edge of the Draven expanse. 3 soldiers had gone out. Only one came back. Eyes wide. Smiling. Not breathing. The pod bay filled with command staff. The survivor's body was rigid, eyes locked open, mouth twitching as if trying to form words. The medical drone scanned him and beeped. No brain activity. No trauma. Just empty. The feed showed the missing team walking across dark terrain. Then static. When the footage cleared, only one remained. The camera caught movement in the reflection of his visor. Something tall. Thin. Smiling too wide. Then the audio began to loop a whisper in Terran dialect. Do you believe yet? General Kavorik stormed into the war room. Explain this, he snapped, throwing the datapad onto the table where Ward sat. Ward didn't look up. You already know what it is. Enough of your riddles, human. I want a report, not campfire tales. You want me to tell you this is a rogue virus. Some enemy probe. That science will fix it. I won't lie to you. I want the truth. Ward stood. His voice was low and controlled. Then here it is. The entity's real. It's ancient. And it knows we're here. Every joke you made, every myth you mocked? It fed on that. It grows stronger the more you deny it. Kvorik's nostrils flared. You're suggesting we believe in myths? That's not military strategy. Ward stepped closer. You think belief is weakness. I get it. Your entire civilization sterilized fear from your species. We didn't. Humans adapted to survive monsters, not by pretending they weren't real, but by remembering. You're mad. Ward leaned in, his voice sharp and steel-hard. I saw it once before. Hollow Gate. The first time we poked into the void too far. That thing wiped out 9 colonies. Not with weapons. With forgetting. People started vanishing from photos, records, minds. I'm the only reason it didn't spread. What did you do? Ward looked at his hands. I reminded it we remembered. I gave it fear. I carved myths in blood and screamed every name it had. It recoiled. For a time. Kvorik stared at him. You're asking me to sanction belief-based warfare. Rituals. Superstition. No, Ward said. I'm telling you to pick between laughing and surviving. The lights flickered again. A console exploded. A scream echoed from the barracks. Kvorik's comm lit up. General, we've lost Deck 5. They're seeing things. Some are, sir. 1 squad's missing. Entire squad. Gone. Rooms intact. No bodies. Ward was already grabbing his coat. Where are you going now? Kvorik barked. Ward stopped in the doorway. To wake the dead. The armory stank of oil, sweat, and old iron. Ward unlocked a case that hadn't been touched since Earth joined the Alliance. Inside, blades. Talismans. A beaten book covered in ash and old Terran runes. He strapped on his gear. Lit a match. Whispered a name in a forgotten dialect. Behind him, a soldier approached, alien, shaking. I want to believe, the young voice said. I don't want to die not remembering who I was. Ward turned. What's your name? The alien hesitated. Tverin. Recon class. Then carve it into your chest plate. You forget it, it forgets you. The soldier obeyed. Ward handed him a glyph-carved knife. Let's go teach the shadows why humans still tell stories. The lights died completely. And the ship began to scream. They're not responding, the comms officer whispered, his voice barely audible over the hiss of static. General Kvorik slammed his fist into the console. Try again. Use emergency subchannels. Override encryption. I've tried every protocol. There's no signal. It's like they never existed. 6 elite units don't just vanish. You don't misplace 200 soldiers. Ward stepped into the command deck, coated in dust and dark armor etched with Terran runes. His eyes were colder than vacuum. They weren't lost, he said. They were forgotten. You again, Kvorik muttered, voice laced with disdain. You think now is the time for your ghost stories? Ward nodded toward the viewport. Your men were trained to fight physics. This thing doesn't play by your rules. The ship trembled. Lights flickered. Across the deck, displays glitched and rearranged themselves, glyphs replaced with looping symbols no one recognized. The medic burst in, out of breath. Deck 9's medical bay is empty. No patients, no staff. The logs show they were never admitted. But I saw them, another officer whispered. I talked to one of them an hour ago. Broken leg. I helped him walk. His name was... He trailed off, face going pale. Can't remember, can you? Ward said quietly. That's how it starts. General Kvorik's fists clenched. We need a full lockdown. I want Marine units on every deck. Seal off the AI core. Run a system cleanse. Ward moved closer, voice low and sharp. You're trying to fight it with order. That's what feeds it. It consumes certainty. The more you assert control, the more you give it to chew on. This isn't a hack. It's conceptual warfare. You don't purge it. You confront it. Kavorik turned to him. What exactly are you suggesting? Ward tossed a small, glowing object onto the table. It was a Terran data relic, an obsidian tablet pulsing faintly with red light. Activate the ritual core. The command deck went silent. You want us to power up that thing? It's the only thing that can hold it back, Ward said. Belief-based countermeasures. Emotional energy. Memory anchoring. That's madness. It's human. The screens flared with sudden brightness. A voice spoke. No, several voices layered together. Male, female, childlike, ancient. Who are you again? It asked. The words appeared on every screen. I am General Kavorik, the general replied through gritted teeth. Incorrect. You are nobody. An echo. A faint scream in the dark. The floor vibrated with a pulse that shook teeth in their sockets. A scream rang out from the far corridor, guttural and primal. Ward spoke clearly, firmly. It's testing us. Seeing who breaks first. If you doubt yourself even once, it takes more. Another officer gripped the table. I can't remember my daughter's name. Carve it into your palm, Ward growled. Say it out loud. Anchor her to your memory. The man obeyed, hand shaking, whispering. Serena. 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 The ship lights dimmed to near black. Emergency red snapped on, bathing the deck in bloody hues. We're not holding this thing back with logic, Ward said. You've got 10 minutes before it gets bold enough to eat command. I need access to the myth chamber. You're not authorized, Kavorik snapped. You're not in control, Ward replied. If you want to stay relevant in your own timeline, give me the override now. The general hesitated, then input the code. You're on your own. I won't have this crew believe in fantasies. Ward's eyes narrowed. You're not a leader. You're a statistic waiting to happen. As Ward left the deck, the hallway twisted around him. The lights didn't flicker, they fled. He walked in darkness, alone. From behind him, voices whispered his name, always from the corner of his hearing. He gripped the hilt of his combat blade tighter. His mind cycled through old mantras. Blood remembers. Fire binds. Names matter. He reached the myth chamber. It was a relic from old Earth, considered ceremonial by most, a joke by others. Carvings lined the walls. Ash runes. Bone sigils. A single control panel pulsed blue in the center. Ward placed his palm on the stone and whispered. I believe. The core activated. Energy surged, humming low like the growl of a buried beast. Runes across the chamber glowed red, then gold. Back on the command deck, a tremor passed through the ship, outward. Sensors pinged an anomalous wave bursting in all directions. What the hell did he do? Kavorik whispered. The screen stopped glitching. For the first time in hours, everything went quiet. Then came a laughter. Not from any person, but from the walls. From the floor. From inside their bones. He amuses me, said the entity's voice. The only one here who remembers what war really is. Ward returned. His presence now felt larger. Not physically, but conceptually. As if he took up more space in the mind. He addressed the crew. It's not over. That was the pushback. Now comes the counterstrike. We've contained the influence, an officer said. But the source is still inside the hull. Engineering levels are phasing in and out. We lost a crew of 30. Ward nodded. Then it's time we stopped reacting. Suit up. I'm taking a team into the dark. You're going down there yourself? Kavorik asked, incredulous. You don't send someone else to fight your monster. I'm coming with you. Ward looked him over. Can you remember who you are without your rank? Kavorik hesitated. Then stay here. And pray you remember me when it starts pulling names again. Ward left with 5 volunteers, 2 humans, 3 aliens who had stopped laughing. Each bore a relic, a carved weapon, or a written memory. As they descended, the darkness welcomed them like an old friend. And in that silence, Ward whispered, Let's go remind it why it fears us. You feel that? Lieutenant Kale whispered. Ward didn't answer. He kept moving, boots crunching over warped metal. The corridor pulsed like a living vein. The light strips overhead flickered, not randomly, but rhythmically, as if breathing. Kale gripped her relic blade tighter. It's watching. No, Ward muttered. It's learning. Behind him, the 5-man team followed in tight formation. The silence pressed down on them, thick, wet, aware. They had passed decks that no longer existed on the ship's map. Hallways that looped back into themselves. Empty bunks where pictures of loved ones had been burned out of the wall, faces missing, names erased. Private Varn grunted. This place was full of engineers a day ago. Ward paused. You mean it should be? I mean I remember them. Their voices. Their songs. That stupid gambling pool. Then hold on to that. It's your shield. They reached the engine bay. The door was open, but beyond it, nothing looked like machinery. The inside had collapsed into something that resembled a cathedral, black stone, flickering flame, shapes that shifted when stared at too long. Private Yallo dropped to one knee. I can't go in there. I just saw. Ward didn't let him finish. He grabbed Yallo by the collar, forced him to look him in the eyes. What did you see? My mother. She was smiling. She died on Valkros. I watched it happen. That wasn't her. It's a puppet. A mask. Say her name. Yallo hesitated. Say. Her. Name. Riva, he whispered. Louder. Riva! The name echoed through the corridor like thunder. The shifting shadows at the door twisted violently, retreating an inch. Ward released him. Good. Keep saying it if you forget. And if you stop saying it, I'll kill you myself before it takes you. Yallo nodded, trembling. Ward turned to the others. Inside that bay is the core. It's corrupted. It doesn't want to be shut down, it wants to replace us. Not by killing, but by overriding. To it, we're just unprotected code. Ideas to be deleted. Kale stepped forward. And you think belief is enough? I don't think. I know. He stepped through the threshold. For a second, nothing happened. Then the walls screamed. The sound wasn't noise, it was memories, weaponized. Screams from past battles, names of dead friends, laughter that once comforted now turned against them. Kale dropped her rifle and clutched her head. Make it stop! Ward planted himself in the center of the room and began to chant. It was Old Terran. A battle prayer lost to time. The words weren't meant for translation. They were meant to be remembered. The walls convulsed. Energy flared. The twisted core at the center of the room revealed itself. A sphere of spiraling light that bent around itself, flickering between reality and imagination. Private Varn charged forward, screaming. For Earth! He never reached the core. Something grabbed him mid-step. He didn't vanish. He unhappened. One moment he existed. The next, there was no memory of him, not even the echo of his boots. Yallo gasped. Who was that? Kale punched him. Don't think about it. Don't give it room. Ward didn't flinch. Anchor your minds. Your name. Your story. Your rage. Burn it into your soul. The entity spoke through the core. You forget yourselves, so we take what's left. Ward responded with a roar. You want forgotten things? Here's one, me. The glow intensified. Visions exploded through the minds of the squad. Childhood homes collapsing. First kisses turned to ash. Funerals that hadn't happened yet. Everything they feared, everything they regretted, mirrored and twisted and used like blades. Ward stepped closer to the core. This is your last chance, the entity whispered. Let go of the lie. Accept the quiet. Ward reached into his coat and pulled out a jagged piece of metal, a fragment from Hollow Gate, engraved with 36 names. I remember them. Every scream. Every plea. I made sure their deaths meant something. That you couldn't eat them. You hated that, didn't you? The core pulsed erratically. The cathedral shimmered. You're broken, Elias Ward. I'm Terran. He plunged the fragment into the floor. The relic blade burned gold. Reality buckled, snapping around the impact. A burst of energy flared out. Yallo and Kale were thrown back, but remained conscious. The hallucinations broke like glass. The core flickered, exposed. Kale rose, blood streaming down her temple. It's vulnerable. Ward turned. We hit it with everything. They didn't use plasma. They used belief. Kale recited the victory hymn of Mars' liberation. Yallo beat his chest and shouted his mother's name. Ward walked straight into the flickering sphere, each step burning his skin, bones cracking with every breath. You forgot one thing, he said. Humans? We thrive on pain. The entity's voice warped into screams. You'll die. Ward laughed, blood pouring from his nose. I already did. You just forgot to bury me. He drove his hand into the core. Not a weapon. A memory. The last image of his squad, laughing, smoking, bloodied but alive. He forced it into the entity. The core shattered. The scream that followed had no sound, only pressure. The false cathedral disintegrated. The room was real again. Metal. Cables. Steam. Ward collapsed. Kale rushed to him, catching him just before his head hit the floor. Ward! Elias! His eyes fluttered open. Didn't I say, belief works? Yallo knelt beside him. It's gone. It's really gone. Ward chuckled. Then let's make sure no one forgets. You shouldn't be alive. Ward's voice was barely audible over the blaring klaxons as he pulled himself to his feet, bloodied hands gripping the fractured edge of the control panel. Kale stood beside him, jaw clenched, rifle smoking, sweat glistening on her brow. But I am, he said. The chamber around them was in shambles. The core was gone, reduced to broken shards of light flickering in and out of visibility, like forgotten memories struggling to stay real. Whatever the entity had been, it was no longer anchored here. But the silence it left behind wasn't peace. It was warning. Yallo paced in a daze, mumbling. I remember my brother's face again. I didn't even realize I'd forgotten it. Ward touched his chest. The engraved names burned cold against his skin. That's how it works, he said. You never know what it's stolen until you remember you had it. Kale turned to him. Did we win? No, Ward said. We bought time. That's all victories are anymore. Static surged through the intercom, then cleared with a hiss. Kvorik's voice cut in. Report. Ward grabbed the mic. Target neutralized. Core destabilized and purged. There was a pause. Then, acknowledged. Return to command. Alliance brass is requesting immediate debrief. Ward looked at the others. Yallo wouldn't stop whispering names under his breath. Kale kept her eyes on the shadows, her finger twitching near the trigger. We're coming, he said, then clicked off the line. Kale turned to him. They're going to cover this up, aren't they? They always do. They'll say it was a freak accident. Radiation leak. Rogue AI. Ward nodded. But the crew will remember. And that's enough. They moved out. As they climbed back through the ship, the signs of infection had faded, but scars remained. Walls once warped were now still, but every so often they caught themselves hesitating before turning corners, second-guessing memories. The silence between sentences had grown heavier, and no one wanted to admit they heard whispers and white noise. By the time they reached the command deck, the atmosphere had changed. Soldiers stood straighter. The mockery from earlier was gone, replaced by quiet deference. Ward noticed the glyphs scrawled onto some of their armor, Terran letters, old Earth symbols, protective charms that days ago would have drawn laughter. Kvorik stood in front of the main display, arms behind his back, jaw rigid. He turned slowly when Ward entered. You went rogue, he said. You activated a forbidden protocol, ignored direct orders, put your squad in unauthorized engagement. Ward said nothing. You caused system instability, weaponized psychological data, and introduced superstition into official doctrine. Ward met his gaze unflinching. And I stopped your ship from becoming a myth. Kavorik walked closer. You know what happens next. There will be inquiries. Investigations. The Alliance Council is already compiling a containment narrative. Ward pulled a dated chip from his belt and dropped it onto the table. Every crew member in the engine sector recorded what they saw. Their suits streamed live until the core collapsed. I've duplicated the logs. Even if you bury this, you'll never stop the retellings. Myths don't die. They evolve. Kavorik picked up the chip but didn't look at it. And what do you expect? A medal? A command promotion? I expect nothing. I believe something. Kavorik's voice sharpened. We don't fight with belief. We fight with data, discipline, structure. You tried that. Ward cut in. And it almost got us wiped from reality. You don't fight something like that with equations. You fight it with identity. With memory. With fear acknowledged, not denied. The general stared at him. You sound like a fanatic. Ward's mouth twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. You sound like a man who lived. Kavorik looked past him, eyes falling on Kale and Yallo. And them? They believed. That's why they're still here. Kavorik turned back to the main screen, silent. Then, after a long moment, he spoke. The Alliance will spin this. They'll say it was a corrupted AI experiment gone wrong. They'll send cleanup teams. Sanitize the records. And you'll be reassigned to some remote outpost, where you can't infect others with your ideas. Ward nodded. Then make sure they send me somewhere dark. Because that's where it waits. The general gave him a long look. Then he pressed a few buttons on the console. A section of the wall slid open behind him, an old weapons vault, long decommissioned. Inside, resting on a mount, was a relic, a Terran war blade, scorched and carved with words in a language the Alliance had deemed obsolete. You weren't the first to try this kind of warfare, Kavorik said. Decades ago, a human captain brought similar tools aboard. Said myths were defensive systems for a spiritual threat. We thought he was insane. What happened to him? Kavorik shrugged. We don't know. He vanished mid-jump. No trace. Ward stepped to the vault and lifted the blade. It hummed, not electronically, but emotionally. A memory given weight. Then it's time someone remembered. As he walked out, every soldier in the command deck watched him. Not a single one laughed. Later that night, in the dark corners of the crew quarters, small groups began whispering old Terran myths. Just stories, they said. Just jokes to pass the time. But they wrote names on their armor. They carved sigils into door frames. And every time the lights flickered, they didn't call tech support. They called for Ward. Because he wasn't a man anymore. He was a warning. The briefing room was quiet. Not the disciplined silence of a military chamber, but something more fragile, an absence of certainty. Officers sat stiffly, trying not to glance at the man standing alone near the viewport. Ward didn't speak. He just stared out into the starfield, eyes locked on the endless black, as if waiting for it to blink first. Across from him, High Consul Varix cleared his throat. Commander Ward, you've been summoned under Directive 12-4. Your testimony regarding the incident aboard Orion's Mercy is now part of official War Council records. Begin. Ward turned, slow and deliberate. You want facts or the truth? Varix raised an eyebrow. We require data. Then your crew's already dead. You just don't know it yet. The consul frowned. Explain. You can log readings. Measure radiation. Reconstruct timelines. But that won't stop it. This wasn't an anomaly. It was an intelligence. It studies. It adapts. And it was never meant to be understood. It was meant to be feared. Another counselor leaned forward. What exactly do you believe attacked the ship? I don't believe, Ward said. I remember. And I made damn sure others would too. They exchanged glances. One activated a holoscreen. Footage played, warped hulls, corrupted voices, names disappearing from identification tags. The image froze on a single frame, Ward blade raised, eyes glowing with a light not from any torch or reactor. Varix gestured toward it. You expect us to accept this performance as proof? You think I staged a memory collapse? Bent physics across 5 decks? Turned 20 soldiers into ideas? Varix leaned forward. We think you weaponize fear to destabilize your command and manipulate the chain of authority. The ritual core is a banned device. Because you were afraid it might work, Ward shot back. Because you knew if it did, you'd have to admit your science isn't enough. Another voice cut in, female, sharp. Admiral Surya, veteran of a dozen campaigns. Why didn't it consume you? Ward met her gaze. Because I gave it something it couldn't digest. And what was that? He stepped closer, voice steady. Conviction. Every time it reached into me, I screamed back everything I refused to forget. Names. Faces. Losses I still bled from. Pain sharp enough to cut the void. Surya didn't blink. You're saying belief is a weapon. I'm saying belief is a firewall. Rituals. Stories. Myths. They're not fiction. They're code, hardwired into us to fight what can't be named. Varix folded his hands. Even if we accepted this entity exists, how would you contain it? You don't contain it, Ward said. You acknowledge it. You fear it enough to keep it outside. You remember. That's the cage. Forgetting is what breaks the lock. A long pause followed. The footage ended. The chamber dimmed. Surya broke the silence. So what do we do? Ward reached into his coat, pulled out a small case, and placed it on the table. Inside were old relics, worn charms, data slates, a fragment of the shattered core engraved with the words, Fear binds. Memory saves. You make this standard issue. Every ship. Every station. Every soldier. You teach them what we were never supposed to forget. You teach them to believe. Varix scoffed. You want to militarize fairy tales. Ward smiled grimly. No. I want to survive. A voice crackled from the calm. Security breach, Hangar 2. Something just stepped out of the rift beacon. The room erupted into motion. Alarms wailed. Varix stood, stunned. That's impossible. We haven't initiated a jump. Ward's expression didn't change. No. But someone else did. He tapped his comm. Kale. Lockdown engineering. Prepare the secondary core. Surya was already moving. Ward, with me. If this is another breach. It's not, Ward said. It's a reminder. They raced through the corridor, weapons drawn. The lights flickered, 3 times in succession, then a low hum. Ward muttered. It remembers our frequency. Surya aimed her rifle. Contact left, visual distortion. A shape emerged. Tall, eyeless, limbs too long for bone. It shimmered like a half-erased file. The soldiers behind them froze. Then forgot they were soldiers. Ward moved first. He walked toward it, blade drawn, muttering names. Daria. Kellen. Ramos. Kier. The creature twitched. Ward's voice rose. Juno. Marka. Elena. Me. The entity lunged. He met it head-on, blade humming, runes flaring gold. Each strike chanted a name. Each name burned brighter than plasma. It screamed, flickering, trying to replace him, override him. But Ward didn't blink. Didn't break. Didn't forget. One last name. He whispered it with a final thrust. Hope. The thing tore apart. Reality reasserted. Silence. The soldiers gasped, remembering they were alive. Surya approached, panting. That was an echo, Ward said. A ripple. They don't attack alone anymore. They test. Probe. But now? He looked up at the red emergency lights, glowing dim. They know we remember. Later that night, Ward stood alone in the chapel bay, once ceremonial, now a field bunker for belief-based training. Recruits filed in quietly. Some looked skeptical. Others scarred. No one laughed. Ward opened a worn book. "This isn't scripture," he said. "It's a manual. Every myth, every warning, every name inside is a blade." He held it up. "And out there in the dark? There's something that only dies when we remember why we're afraid." They listened. Because this time, no one wanted to forget.